Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lilian Medina, and together with Gabriela Malacrida, we would like to welcome you on behalf of CLAYSS to this panel. We are going to discuss here how to institutionalize the service learning processes in higher education institutions. In these seminars, we have heard lots of experience that were really very interesting and motivating. And the coordinators of these experiences show what happens with students, how service learning may go hand in hand, and how the community is part of the classroom. We would like to go a bit beyond that. And the idea is to ask ourselves, what do we do so that service learning is not just part of an experience in an institutions with a group of students and with professors coordinating them, but of being a fundamental part of the DNA of that institution. This is why we ask ourselves how to institutionalize service learning. Dr. Underbrook says that to institutionalize means to integrate service learning into the mission, into the culture, and into the day-to-day practices of an institution. It's easy to understand that this takes a long time, it's a long process, and that each institution incorporates this process in a different fashion. We have 4 institutions here in the panel, and they will tell us how they move towards institutionalization. So we invite you to listen to each of them and try and identify the footprint or the elements that helped these institutions in this process. At the end of the presentations, we will have the chance of a Q&A session with the panelists. So thank you very much, and let's begin. Thank you very much. Welcome. First of all, Evelina Terán will have the floor. She's a veterinary doctor, a professor of biology and social community research and intervention project in the Pablo Apostol School in Yerba Buena, Tucumán, an institution where she coordinates the activities of the Share Knowledge and Social Commitment Program in the areas of health and environment. She has authored many research studies and chapters of many books, and she participated in post-graduation courses. She is an alumni and a coordinator of experiences that won the Solidarity Schools Award. She's also participated in national and international process, and in 2001 received an award in the San Miguel de Tucumán municipality. She also was mentioned as Missionaries of the World based on her community health and research studies based on how health and scorpions, and you know that this is a long CV, but welcome, Evelyn. So welcome, everyone. My name is Evelina Terán. I represent the Pablo Apostol School located in Yerba Buena in the province of Tucumán. The school was founded in 1990, and since 1996, several activities of service learnings are being held. Of course, that over time they became institutionalized, and we are in the path of celebrating the 30th anniversary of service learning, and if we analyze the motto of the school, here you learn to live while you work and live. So we can see here the ideas of the school. The idea is to harvest in the school. As you can see on the screen, the openness, the capacity to change, intellectual honesty, availability, service and solidarity, critical judgment, analysis and reflection, and of course, the expectations, what we want students to achieve is to think independently, to generate their own projects, to understand the world in which they live, to assume responsibility, and to make significant contributions to the community. Here you have the various stages of institutionalization. The project is started, then something happened with the data. In 1996, we started with the snakes process, snakes and scorpions, community health. That was the first project. It started with one teacher and a small group of students. Over time, they started working, and different groups of students joined this project, as well as different teachers. So in all these stages, you can see that there are different projects at the school. And in 2007, to date, the project is a shared knowledge and social commitment. And we include all the areas on all the subjects in the school. I would like to say something, that is to thank a great teacher that we had, a great professor that with his willingness, his spirit is to convey all its knowledge, has been a significant guide to different students and groups of students. And I'm proud of him because he's my father. And certainly this is a lifelong project for many students who have been with him and who have been in this kind of projects. So not to start crying. This is not the order I planned. But anyway, with respect to the various problems that we have, different concerns of different groups of students, in 1996, the project started with one student, and then many other groups of students started joining her because there was difficulty in Tucumán to identify the various snakes that were creating accidents. So the students prepared a dichotomic class so as to identify these types of snakes that had medical significance. And in 1997, I, as a student, there was a great impact because a young lady died in Tucumán because of scorpions that had bitten her. And so we started working on prevention actions, how to avoid accidents and what to do. And so there was a great impact in the community. We carried out training sessions in different places in the province of Tucumán as well as in other provinces. And that was the starting point for this project. And as you can see here on the screen, so that you may be able to carry out all these activities, you need this positive social fabric. That is the various relations, the various links or bonds that are really very dynamic, so that you may create all these bonds between the school and the large number of various organizations, researchers that cooperate continuously and permanently over time with service learning projects that are generated at the school. This is because a group of young people started working on this, creating these bonds so that this may be implemented. This is the very beginning of the school in the service learning activities. They started, as I mentioned before, with medical significant animals, and then we added vector, different parasitosis, emerging diseases, zoonosis. And so it started, the number of students started increasing, because you know that there is a contagion effect. When students become involved, they say, I want to be part of this. So they started being part of this project. And you can see here in the pictures how the children are really involved with the society, so as to cover or to bridge some gaps, to give a response to some need regarding the promotion of health. In these other images, these are pictures that are highlights for the project. On the one side, we can see the project of the native forest in the San Javier Mountain and the agricultural center of San Agustín. Here we work with children in vulnerable situations and at risk, both at educational and cultural aspects. And in the images below, there were teachers that were certainly concerned because of accidents with poisonous animals. They came to the school so that our students might train them regarding medical significant animals and biodiversity. And this was a very important project in the Quam community with the shamanic animals in the Quam cosmovision. This was not part of the curricula of any specific subject, but we started adapting everything because sometimes there are needs. The students are the leading actors. So based on, in my case was a scorpion, but some others think of snakes or some other animals. So there are some concerns, and this gives rise to starting something new. And this is the driving force. And we can see to the right that since this project was significant, was important, was not just students at the school, but we can see parents, grandparents, so the rest of the family. And this is a service learning activity. Now, moving to some other types of projects at the school, there is to cover some other needs. This was, for instance, the construction of the community kitchen, known as New Dawn. And here a group of students made a diagnosis, then there was a definition of responsibilities, a kitchen was built, that was the main objective of the project. But after that, considering the significance of the project, it was not just a kitchen, but it became a space for community activities. So there are different types of workshops. So it's a center where people meet. And I would like to read something that certainly explains what this project was for many people regarding the mothers of the neighborhood, saying this is ours, this is our space, and we may receive everyone who needs it. And the students, it's important to do a self-assessment after these experiences that are really very important in the lives of our students. Discover that each of us has a different talent and gift, but when you join it with the others, we may achieve what we propose us to do all together. So this is a work in collaboration, and this has to be highlighted. The Techo project. Here in this project, the volunteers that are the students of the last year of a high school with teachers that of course accompany them. So they do fundraising so as to build houses in areas that are really very vulnerable in the province. And in this case, we can see the project that started last year in 2024. I'm really proud of this project because when we speak about service learning, how children may interact in at different stages in their lives, everything is achieved through this project. The project is zoologic diversity in the context of One Health, and it covers many projects. It has 80 students that are participating because we are speaking here about 19 interactive experiences that have a community insertion. In this case, the students may incorporate their knowledge and then convey the knowledge. In this case, it was with the Miguel Lisho Foundation that is outside the school. So in the Miguel Lisho Foundation is an institution that is devoted to natural sciences. They have the botanical garden, is the museum of the faculty. So this was an interaction, a meeting among our students, our other schools, researchers, undergraduates, the general public. So students here promote the various works or projects that we carried out. But to achieve everything that you have seen here, we need everything that sometimes is not seen at first sight. It's the work of students, the working in groups, try and define the roles of each of them in the team, analyzing the literature, get together outside school hours, but of course to check with specialists in different subjects, and this helps reinforce. And I think that service learning approach allows for the generation of these kind of spaces where the youth get together and get involved, engaged. They feel comfortable, and we add more and more students. So, after all this, we do an assessment. This is an external assessment. And here we highlight 9 C's in Spanish. C's in our institutions. We can say commitment, knowledge, cooperation, communication, connection, everything at the service of community, without forgetting that there should be consistency, continuity, and conviction. And of course, this help us, or this motivate us to keep on doing this, and opens new horizons for our students and alumni, because they get to us very grateful after graduation, and they keep on being involved in service learning projects, and this is part of their life projects. And this is what is important for us, the footprint that we may leave on them. And you can see Raúl to the left in his first year at the medical school, providing or giving a class to a group of students. And then to the right we see Julieta, who was in Uganda, in Africa, and she was working, she was doing some community work, and she sent a reflection. We found a world where we can help in many areas. We did some work in public health and education, trying to organize and project programs in the village, because it really suffered from tuberculosis, VIH, and malaria. But at the same time, we prepared individual projects with specific person in poor health conditions. So they saw that their contribution, in this case, Julieta's contributions, led to a transformation. And so there was a major change. And all these service learning projects are part of the life of our students. Now, I guess that you would ask what are the implications of our significant experience in a process of institutionalizing the service learning, because these ideas start from reality but change the life or children or students, youth, communities. So there is a change in the way we see the natural world and the social world. So these are enriching events, and certainly they give a dimension to the social value and function of learning. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Evelyn. Now we're going to listen to Elize Kong. Dr. Elize Kong is responsible for strategic affairs at the School of Education of the Northwest University in South Africa. She has a degree in education with honors, and she has a graduate degree and a master's degree on education from the Potchefstroom University for Christian higher education, and he obtained his PhD at Northwest University. Her research is focused on the role of the educator in the construction of public schools, successful South African public schools, with a strong emphasis on the promotion of civic responsibility. She's an active member of EduXRI and a committed defender of community engagement, promoted by her conviction of the high role of educators. Dr. Kong has constantly contributed to various community initiatives and not-for-profit organizations, extending their influence much beyond the university context.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everybody. I am going to start with a bit of a contextualization of our situation, just to give you some background. Okay, so the Northwest University came into being in 2004 as a merged university through the instruction of the government of South Africa. In the first few years, until 2016, we worked as a federal system, and then in 2016, we moved to a unified institution. This was great for community engagement in the university because for the first time, we had leadership allocated to focus on community engagement and purely focused on community engagement, where previously it fell under research and innovation. So from 2016 to last year, community engagement and specifically service learning grew a lot. If we use Furco's rubric for institutionalization, we've reached 50 to 70% on approximately all the levels. Unfortunately, in 2024, we took a step backwards during a restructuring process where the portfolio for community engagement was moved back to the DVC, or the Directorate of Research and Innovation, and we became one of 9 departments in his portfolio. Luckily, not all is lost, as 2 of the faculties fought to retain a deputy dean for community engagement, including my faculty of education. Now I would just like to also share a bit of information about the Faculty of Education. Our undergrad program has approximately 12,000 students on 3 campuses, as well as a distance student or distant component. The distance between the campus to the furthest south and the furthest north is about 300 kilometers. And we also have aligned programs, which means everybody is assessed in the same manner and write the same summative assessments. So in 2016, 2017, and until the appointment of us as deputy deans in the faculty, we kind of entered a world where everything was in place for teaching and learning and research. Teaching and learning was like a set of homes that linked together, and research was this palace which everybody strives for, because that's how you build your professional profile or your academic profile. Unfortunately, the same is not true for community engagement. In this portfolio, we had to figure out what is our portfolio? What are we going to do? And we had to convince staff who's already overburdened that there's value in getting involved. That was something they had to do, but didn't really want to do. So how did we do this? What did we decide? As a Faculty of Education, and because we're a serving profession, we decided to encourage service learning. Sorry. Oh, no. So we had to find ways to do it. It's very difficult to change a program once it has been registered in South Africa, but we were lucky that somewhere somebody had foresight to include an outcome on the reflection of service learning in a work integrated or teaching practice module. So our priority then became to create opportunities for students to start joining service learning projects, well, to get them there first and then the opportunity for students, but at the same time to find a way that the academic staff has a reason to do this through embedding community engagement in the task agreement of an academic staff member. So how did we do this? We started by creating opportunities for staff to get funding for service learning projects. It started small, one project per campus, once off an amount of 50,000 Rand. Since then, we have moved up where staff members now get 150,000 Rand allocated over a period of 3 years, so 50,000 per year, to allow for a service learning project to become self-sufficient and self-sustainable at the end of the 3 years before we start funding new projects. Then all new lecturers have to attend an induction for 2 days where they are given more information on the faculty's policies in terms of community engagement and linked to that teaching practice, as it also falls in my portfolio. Then through the support of the faculty management, we started sponsoring the attendance of academics to conferences specifically focused on service learning. And this is the second year that I had the opportunity to bring a group of approximately 8 academics to attend this conference, as we felt that it gives a wide spectrum of exposure. And then making sure that there are processes and formalizing processes for reporting and monitoring. At the same time, from the institution side, there was a formalization of guidelines for what should be considered as community engagement. That is then included in the performance agreement of academics annually, as well as in the promotion criteria. So now, like research and teaching and learning, community engagement influences your promotion. And then I think some of the staff members may tell you that I sound like a broken record, but I use every opportunity to create awareness of the role of community engagement, how important it is, and how much they can enrich their teaching by considering service learning projects. And then nothing of this would have been possible if the whole leadership of the faculty did not buy into the message and supported the message. Mm-hmm. So what comes next? What is our dream? To further work on this institutionalization. Our aim is by 2028 to allow each Bachelor of Education student opportunities to either become part of a service learning project, but because of the large numbers, that will never be possible. I mean, 12,000 students across the whole of South Africa. We are looking at creating outreach opportunities, but on the basis of service learning in the sense that they have to link it to their major specialization. And then also at all times to complete the cycle of funding. So at any point we should have 9 projects in a cycle of funding service learning, while the older projects continue because they should be self-sustainable. Lastly then, well, not completely lastly, our focus for academics to realize that by formalizing their engaged teaching, the service learning project, into a research opportunity, becoming engaged scholars and publishing from their service learning projects. And then keeping them focused on the SDGs, because they sometimes forget to make the link, so we are just working on awareness there. So for us, our main aim over the next few years is that community engagement in the form of service learning becomes a doing point and not a talking point only. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. Now, José Sepúlveda Maulén will take the floor. He's from Chile. He's a political scientist from Diego Portales University and holds a master's degree in education with a specialization in higher school from the Pontificia Católica University of Chile. He has studied social intervention at the University of Bio and is currently pursuing a diploma in learning and solidarity service at the Latin American Center for Learning and Solidarity Service. Between 2018 and 2020, he worked as national coordinator of service learning at the Professional Institute of Chile, and in September 2020 he joined the service learning team at the Pontifical Catholic University of Chile, implementing the Uniservitate project. Welcome. Thank you very much, Gabriela. Can you hear me okay? Okay, the organization said you may do whatever you want, so get ready. So we have to speed up everyone because it's after lunch, so I will try and speak about this work. We certainly have orientation for the implementation of social commitment at the Catholic University. This was prepared while preparing my master's degree in the José Sepúlveda Maulén University, and additionally this was financed by Priority Researchers of ININCE, that is Chilean organization that finances research. Within the seminar, we have discussed the because yesterday a colleague was speaking about UNESCO that speaks about citizenship in higher education. We also have a specialized students. And one of the peculiarities mentioned there by a colleague is that in Chile, this is also linked to the legislation, because legislation say that higher education should promote service learning in the students. And then apart from the National Accreditation Committee that do a follow-up considering the allowance profile of the organizations. This is important because there are several reports, for instance, the Human Development of the UNDP, that speaks about or provides a statistics saying that in Chile the participation has been decreasing, as well as interpersonal relations. And another study related to higher education say that students has less hours of participation in political activities, social participation, and they are focused on classes and studies when compared with these other activities that promote an integral formation and participation of students in other activities. So this is important, and the Catholic University had worked on social commitment as a cross-cutting event, and that ability is included in the income students. So if you are a student of the Catholic University, any program should promote this for graduates, and the university has included service learning activity to that effect and has promoted that that methodology be institutionalized. So that at least one program should have 3 or 4 courses with this methodology. For those who have not seen this model, anyway, you may visit the Institutionalization of Service Learning at the UC. There are 4 stages for a program to implement this methodology in 3 or 4 of their courses. But perhaps one of the most specific in environment is that when design the proposal, apart from defining the courses, there should also be at least 3 cross-cutting abilities. And in these cases, and social commitment is deeply involved in social learning because you go to a community and develop a project, that skill should be in all the curricula when we talk about the implementation of the methodology. I will not speak about the institutionalization model. I hope you may review it or we may discuss it afterwards. But my work is also related to social commitment, social engagement. With respect to the conceptual framework and the social engagement, some academics speak about some concepts that are difficult to research, but in this case we have an Anglo-Saxon literature that speaks about the civic and political aspect. In the university, we prepare a study with the Center for the Educational Policies and how this impact in the civic society and students. In Chile, we have a history related to the RCU that certainly we have an quite comprehensive environment that deals with different perspectives. And our colleagues mentioned some of these elements. When we talk about institutionalizing service learning, there are 3 elements of service learning that have been really deeply studied. One is to institutional support, because for the methodology to be part of the university we need that. On the other hand, we need an assessment and evaluation to prepare and have tools so as to measure how the implementation of this methodology moves forward. And the professor spoke about the faculty support. This means that there should be training and support. And then the curricular, the lecturer spoke about school alignment, and perhaps the curricula should be aligned. This says that there should be a consistency between the word and the action, so that the methodology would be consistent as well. So perhaps there are no service learning methodology here, but certainly we may discuss some other authors to be included in this discussion. The challenge for the university: there are different challenges, even though we have been implementing this methodology for 21 years. One is to analyzing the graduates' profiles. Only one part of them speak about social engagement, even though this is a skill that is part of the general graduate profile of the university. There's a perception that some graduates say, I would like to go deeper in these cross-cutting subjects, even though they understand that we work on community engagement. And another objective is that not all of our programs have the institutionalization of survey learning, even though the methodology is present in 45 of our units. This presence means that there should be faculty support, integration into the curriculum, financing, and some other aspects that should be highlighted. So the idea was to strengthen the methodology so as to keep on deepening the incorporation of disability into our university. There are 3 elements. One was a study whether the CB, that is the Center for the Study of Educational Policy. So we interviewed some students, asked them to do an assessment. I use one of the tests to compare those groups that have done survey learning and those that not, and the academic activities, and there were 25 programs, and to understand if there is a qualitative difference between the description of the ability and the methodology. And then also review the document. I asked two professors from other universities to speak about that. As you can see in this chart, to the right in blue, we have service learning and their self-assessment of strengthening of the ability. We have a greater value because the scale was 1 from 10, and to 10 it's the highest score. And on the other side, the scores were lower and more spread out. So this also matches the literature saying that this contributes, strengthen the ability, and based on the tests I made, why there are significant difference between the averages of both groups. On the other hand, in the academic unit of course, education and social sciences have more social commitment compared with engineering, for instance, that have a a lower score, but it's important to see the difference of those that participated and those who did not, and we can say that social and education have a significant difference because each unit also has some things that strengthen the ability. Specifically, this certainly is consistent with the literature where you can see the academic units, but on the other hand, the curricular size of curricular alignment that comes from another strategy also confirms that it's important there should be a curricular consistency. And what they say is that we should take a look at the practice of each academic unit regarding methodology or implementation of a strategy of service learnings. And while reviewing social engagement in curricula, we can see that in health there is a more consistency in the methodology and the cross-cutting line at the difference of social sciences. And these are classical measures of this unit, but we can see these differences that are really very important, and this matches also the literature so that you can see those practices and the disciplinaries that speaks about academic territory. So you have to see that so as to understand how they are reporting the ability. How can we strengthen the skills? So the development centers and the university focus on that, but there are some other shades that may help us have it further. So to have more programs with service learning, to include curriculum when we talk about consultancy, and also the training of faculty so as to show these results and to promote also the strengthening of the skill in other areas. And I would like to share with you something that is really very interesting. So after 21 years of experience in this methodology, the university, okay. So 5 minutes left, but they told me you can do whatever you want. Okay, but I'm going to hit it at time. I did not read the small letter. This is not done time over time. We have reviewed the graduate profile because this exercise is based on the public commitment. So we have to take a look at the graduate profiles at the same time. When there's a question implemented time and again, so how certain cross-cutting skills have been developed. We had instruments that speaks about the 5 dimension. I'm showing you only the highlights, but we have a community, social political skills, and values. And finally, we had a guideline that shows the levels of abilities and skills so that the teachers may evaluate that. So this helps social engagement, but also skills, critical thinking, etc. The conclusions, and I think that I mentioned, so I'm going really very fast because I don't have time, that the idea is to strengthen social engagement, that of course we have service learning with Martinez, Tapia, some things that have been written about service learning. We need to strengthen some units in the curricula, and there should be practice discipline so as to implement the methodology. And this invites us to strengthen visualization of faculty training and to be more focused on our curriculum. I would also like to share with you the transfer of this to the professional field, because I think this is important. I'm a magister in the university, and sometimes we cannot develop this because of time or because there's no so much investigation there. But where can I transfer this? And I will show you 3 examples. The pedagogical advisory. I do it as a part of the team and also academic unit, so as to invite them for institutionalization, and we did the team to reflect on the basis of these skills. And I think that is really very interesting because we have empirical data, and this was important so that academic team may generate management and important changes. And also, I have to develop an academic article that this will help socialize these results. And then a personal reflection. I think that there is some personal thing that has to do with how students involved is not just to take a look at the academic, but to be involved in the social and political in a collective fashion, but not only related to academic, but related to experience, as we heard at the very beginning, how this enriches learning in a safe fashion so as to include a wide learning. And additionally, I work in social dynamics and community. I have been working for many years, so I'm not here by chance, but because I have a family, an empirical study in my background, and I wanted to share this with you. So thank you very much.
Gracias, José. Le damos la bienvenida.
Now we welcome Marina Ocaña. She's a graduate and a teacher at the Commercial Economics High School, Carlos Pellegrini. She has a degree in musical therapy from the University of Salvador and specialist in education from the University of San Andres with a specialization in educational management. She has been an assistant teacher of strategic planning at the education institutions in the master's degree in education management at the University. She's a teacher of music, a tutor in second and first grade, and is part of the Solidarity Action program at the Pellegrini School since it was created in 1995. She is now the director of the program. Welcome. First, let me explain what is this program, Solidarity Action or Service Action. It was a program created in 1995 at our school. It's a pre-university high school. It's a part of the University of Buenos Aires, of the system, and it was created with this objective you can see on the screen: integrate in the curriculum the mandatory practice of social service to the community, to conduct social solidarity attitudes. This characteristic, which is a subject for first and second year, the schools attend this subject every week. It's a very special program. And one might say, if we speak of institutionalization, service learning is a subject, it's part of the curriculum. Well, that's it. There's nothing else to add to that. This is a true institutionalization. But let us try and give some framework to it, because nothing is so easy or simple when we speak of institutionalization of service learning. I think all of us that are part of the conferences, and there's also an agreement in the literature about the fact that service learning is an educational innovation. You may think of it as an educational innovation. There are many definitions of innovation in education, but one of the definitions I personally prefer, and the one that we use most often, following Inés Aguerrondo, a great teacher that was part of education in Argentina. Sorry, I got distracted. Okay. Sorry about that. One of the definitions about an innovation in education is that an innovation in education, no matter how small it is, needs to generate a structural change. At a micro level, it can also be a structural change, or also at a macro level. But the question is it an innovation? It is an innovation when it manages to change those more rigid aspects like school grammar of the education systems. And when you attend this conference every year, this is the 28th edition, you can hear all kinds of experiences. But I do believe that after 30 years, we can say that service learning has modified the school grammars and can truly be seen as an educational innovation.
A este respecto, a mí me gusta mucho.
So in this sense, I love this phrase by Aguerrondo that says, it's the specific experiences that very often start with the idea of a teacher, a group of teachers, a group of students. We've all heard about this in the different conferences and in the presentations yesterday and today. It's those innovative experiences that shake the routine of the system or of the institution, that introduce conflictive elements in those routines, in those old ways, and move the border of what is possible. We heard this morning as well in the last panel. Moving the limits, pushing the limits of what is possible. And we've pushed the limits of possible so far in service learning that this is the 28th conference, right? We started with Professor Tasca this program at the Pellegrini School in 1995. So you can see that in the legislation, at least in Argentina, it appears for the first time in 2006 in the National Education Act, and specifically at the University of Buenos Aires in 2013. They passed this regulation that says that social educational practices must be mandatory for students of all programs at the university. Let us move now to what it means to institutionalize, as Evelina mentioned, and all my colleagues in this panel. Institutionalize an innovation implies that it's no longer an isolated practice, and it becomes part of the formal structures, of the routine, of the organizational culture of the institution. Some key elements for institutionalization that my colleagues mentioned here as well.
But
I don't want to repeat all of them. You can see them on the screen. You can see them there. The engagement of the authorities, funding, resource allocation, and then I'm going deeper into that. But innovations also frequently face obstacles. We know that institutions in general go behind social changes. They follow social changes. So there's always resistance to change. We are, at least in Latin America, we are used to a sustained lack of resources and a lack of sustainable resources. And innovation may start from a wrong diagnosis, or perhaps it was not the best. And in Argentina, mainly in our school, many foreign colleagues are not familiar with it, but you know, the Carlos Pellegrini School is very involved in the socio-political situations and the social processes that are very fast in Argentina and sometimes very overwhelming, and that may affect the continuity of innovations. Thinking of this connection between innovation and institutionalization, we think that they should not be two different processes or having two different chronological moments. I mean, first we innovate and then we try to make that innovation institutionalized. But from the origin of an innovation, we can start generating conditions for institutionalization to be easier, or for the consolidation of service learning projects to be not just including it as a subject, but becoming part of the school culture and continue with those innovating effects in terms of creating transformations. So the idea is that both processes, that is, an innovation and institutionalization, are intertwined, and they are intertwined in the different stages that here we see according to Agarrondo. That is the gestation, implementation, evolution, and the final effects. This is an old version, perhaps, of the PowerPoint. In the first part, the origin, if we speak about how our program was born, there are some conditions that happened at the beginning that were very important, these prior conditions. On the one hand, the institutional decision, of course, an open call to all the faculty at the school. At the time, a high proportion of the teachers were young teachers that were willing to innovate. And what Agarrondo calls the gap to innovate, it has to do with how the power relations at an institution or at an educational system are interconnected to see if we find perhaps a crack through which we can include what we want to do. So at that point, this Solidarity Action Program, or this service program, started at a time where, well, it was a new management of the school with a strong support from the rector of the university, under the leadership of teachers with many years in the school, like the vice rector and Professor Liliana Conejero. I mean, there was a series of factors that contributed to the fact that at that time it was possible to include this. And I say this, and I'm going to explain this when I talk about resistance. And something that is very important that I want to mention briefly, yesterday we talked a lot about participation and engagement in several of the panels. And I think it was in the last panel in the morning when we heard that participation should not be only consultative. Aguerrondo mentions that in an innovation there may be different levels of engagement, that an innovation can be created by technocrats, or there can also be, as very often is the case, at least in Argentina, what she calls a pseudo engagement or participation. That is, consultations, massive consultations. We consult everybody. We want to hear everybody's opinion. And this consultation, finally, of this kind of participation between inverted commas, then there's no feedback and there's no accountability. It's like as if. And they highlight the differentiated participation based on the different roles and contexts as perhaps the most authentic form of participation. So at that point, our program had that kind of participation or engagement at its origin.
Por un lado, el nivel directivo se encargó de un montón de cosas.
On the one hand, the management did lots of things, and on the other hand, the teachers. We said, well, what is this about? Let us see what this is all about. So we had a whole other level in the joint elaboration of the program. So how does this first stage influence institutionalization? Well, it provides key elements. This first stage of innovation and institutionalization providing several of the key elements. The program was implemented in mid-1995. For a couple of years, it was more experimental. We started, shaping the initiative, and then in 1999, if I'm not wrong, it became a formal part of the curriculum. Currently, for over 27 years now, it's a subject for first and second year. 900 students on average per year of the 3 shifts attend this subject. Students from 3rd to 6th year participate, former students, alumni, different members of the educational community can participate in the program voluntarily. And there are around 25 to 30 projects simultaneously with different populations. I'm so sorry, but I'm going to speak a little longer. I will be as short as I can. So knowing how to do it, being willing to do it, and being able to do it. These are different elements that create conditions for institutionalization of any project. Perhaps one of the ones that I'm most interested in, you see that there are lots of issues that have been mentioned. Teacher training, institutional support, curricular integration, creation of consensus. And I was saying, I'm going to focus a little on the conflicts or the resistance you may find in the institutional culture. And generally, we never talk about this because we all want to show the nice side of us. At this Carlos Pellegrini High School, the program had to face strong resistance. there was it had a strong impact on the representations. I mean, what is this? What is this community service? People on wheelchair coming to the school. What is this? This is a deviation from the profile of the graduates of us of this high school that is an elite school. So this was like a contaminating element at some point initially. And with time, and when we thought we were more stable, then different external and internal policies appeared. Even the continuity of our program was threatened. And what strengths have helped us face those conflicts? Something that I think is essential is how this program had started as a program, as a team. The direction of the program had promoted the strength and horizontality among the faculty, the support of the students, the support from the students and from the families, the recognition from institutions and the organizations that we had been working with, and the progressive consolidation of the program. All this allowed us to face the challenges. The consolidation of the program, both in the academic aspects and in the management aspects.
So, through a theoretical production by the faculty, we defined an object to be studied by our subject. So we studied something. We studied social conflicts, social problems. How do we do that? We do that in theory and going to those places where we find those social problems and working with the population that are affected by these problems. And in many cases, some students of the school are involved because, fortunately, we have students that live in vulnerable conditions. But over time, they have been admitted to the Carlos Pellegrini High School. This was something not thought about in 20, 30 years ago. And really, I think that service learning has a lot to do with that, apart from being incorporated to the institutional culture, but also based on some specific initiatives. And finally, I think that it's important that in a panel where we discuss institutionalization, we have to discuss that service learning is an educational practice. Those of us who are involved in that are teachers, are professors from different subjects, I don't know, music, so from teaching music to being involved in the leadership of a Solidarity Action project. But the point is that because of all the work involved in carrying out, as you know, carrying out a service learning project, it's okay that we receive a salary. It's okay to have funds for service learning projects. And both funding and the political decision, I think, I don't know if they are the most important, but certainly they are essential for these practices. And sorry for extending my presentation. Thank you very much. So, the idea, what we thought together with with Lilian and not Iris, because I mentioned Iris, but I was yesterday with Iris. So with Lilian, we thought that we should have a modern way of participation because we are two young ladies. I don't know why everyone is laughing here. Wow. I'm making a mistake here. Okay, so why don't you check the QR code, Mariano, that you're here, if somebody cannot scan the QR? So we prepare some questions so as to supplement the presentations of our colleagues, and then we will try and find the commonalities. Mariano has a QR in their hand, so if you cannot scan it from the screen, and so when anyone has scanned the QR code, we will start with the first question. So this is a way of participation so as to expand the presentations that were really different and interesting from schools coming from outside Buenos Aires, international universities, uh, uh, universities from the global south, I would say. So, so shall we go on with the question? Okay. Oh, sorry.
Ahí va. Ahí va. La primera pregunta.
The first question is, what are the conditions or elements that promote the institutionalization of service learning? And with Lilian, we thought about some options. So please select the two that are most important for you, and then there are other possibilities that perhaps are not the options we thought about. One is, so that may be translated if the most important is the regulation related to the training of teachers or the participation of community stakeholders in the development of the projects or the awareness of students regarding community problems. We think that some of these dimensions perhaps are not or have not been mentioned too much, but from our perspective, from institutionalization, these are some that were certainly important from us. After your answers, we are going to give the floor to our colleagues. So we start with the three questions, and then the panel members will have a possibility to make a comment. Second question. What are the challenges of institutionalizing service learning? And please select the two that are the most important concerns. Perhaps this is related to the peculiarity of some of the schools we have been with, the insecurity, so as to work on the territory, the availability of resources. We may speak about time, space, money, the relationship with the community, the institutional culture that perhaps is too strict, is not open to innovation, that was mentioned, or resistance by the faculty, by teachers. So what are the most important challenges? Okay, can you see them? And this one, why institutionalizing? Because we have been discussing here in the panel, even though Lilian made a very good presentation of why we should move from project and isolated experience to institutionalization, what are the benefits for the community engagement, for the training of our students? What is this chiqui chiqui? I don't know. Please write down whatever you want, because I don't know why it's appearing this on screens. Can you okay. Okay, the benefits or contribution of institutionalizing service learning. Why is it worth institutionalizing it? I will read it. That says authentic education, social equality, teamwork, impact, development of empathy, collaboration, experiential learning, abilities, social impact, sustainability. Okay, so I don't know who's willing to start. So let's go back to the first question. So what are the conditions or elements that promote institutionalization of service learning? Okay, one by one, please. Within the most important aspects that are known in the project, for instance, done from the school, the awareness of students is really very important. If we don't have the driving force from students, that curiosity for knowledge, for improvement, somehow the quality of life of a certain sector in our population, we don't know how to move forward because the car is without fuel in the middle of a road. So the students play a very important role. This is key for me when we talk about service learning project. Of course, that there should be a group of teachers that accompany from the school. And I said at the very beginning, we started with one teacher, a small group of students, and then it in enlarged itself so that several areas, several subjects from the curricula are now part of these service learning projects. At the school, service learning flows in such a way where different disciplines intertwine. For instance, natural sciences or biomedicine. In the case of social sciences, the study of the various eco sessions in English, for instance. Students keep on learning, and sometimes literature is in English. When we talk about spiritual information, pro solidarity, try and find the common good. They also work on the Laudato Si encyclical by Pope Francis, and mathematics. I know I have to learn how to interpret charts, tables. So all this helps these projects, and of course that we need teachers accompanying students. Okay, try and be brief, please. I think that when you talk about the training of teachers, we can see that here is one of the most important because it's the training of teachers and the possibility of disseminating this in the institutions. This will diminish the reluctance. I also agree with the awareness, but sometimes nobody becomes aware or there's no awareness raising. This is why there are different models.
Thank you. I think that the conditions that will favor institutionalization of service learning, I want to say, is awareness. Maybe from the South African context, because service learning is a very limited concept. It is not something that happens in schools at all at primary or secondary level. It's not necessarily something that happens at all universities. It is very limited. But our students go into societies where there are great societal needs and problems. And for us to make our students aware by institutionalizing service learning, they may be the ones that can start the process of bringing service learning into schools and at school level. So by increasing or putting service learning as a pedagogy in the toolbox of pedagogies, this change may come about.
Well, thank you very much for the organization, for letting the active participation of the audience here. So thank you very much, because this makes more dynamic the session. So thank you, really. As part of the team that I was part of presenting, they say, why don't you greet us all? And so I would like to also say hi to Manuel, who is here. But it's important to have these community stakeholders, because on Wednesday we discussed the importance that service learners should be genuine when we talk about collaboration with community. And I think that in this case, perhaps it was not mentioned as aspects that favor institutionalization. And I certainly understand it, because in Chile, we discussed where we should put service learning. Should it be in an academic area, or in the relationship with the community, or in a social environment, I mean. And I think that we should be more creative. For instance, there is something mentioned over there as curricula committee. So let's try and be creative in how we involve the community, not only during the implementation, but in the strategic planning, etc., in the previous stages. I don't have any exact prescription for that, but I think that it is important, because Carolina Fredes was here, and I remember that in one consultancy with her, we were to a soup kitchen. By discussing with these community stakeholders that took 2.5 hours, it was enriching and it was motivating, because we were talking to them in a genuine situation, in a space of work, discussing the challenges of the community. And I think that that type of conversation certainly help us go deeper. Value that mention, appreciate that mention, but at the same time think, how can we make them be more involved? Okay, let's go to the second question. So with Lilian, we took the Furcos dimensions, and certainly, what is the place of community? Because we talk about social commitments, and what about our listening? What about our eyes? Who do we see? Who do we listen to? Who defines this? Sometimes we think that regulation, it's important, it should be part of the functions and mission, but in many cases this is not enough, because we need leaders as we have here, Professor Terán, Professor Tasca, that was here with us this afternoon. So sometimes they are the one who pushes all this, and for this to have a continuity, we have to be open, we have to let people participate to the interior and to the exterior. Students should participate, but at the same time, the collective group, and certainly to endure with the process, because there are some noises involved at the same time. Sorry. Second question. Okay, you were ahead of me. What are the challenges of institutionalizing service learning? And perhaps we may discuss once again. Let's start the other way around. So, Jose, are you willing to be the first? Because they mentioned insecurity for working in the field, the availability of resources, money, time, spaces, relationship with the community. Once again, this is very small. Institutional culture, that it may be rigid or closed, and reluctance by teachers to carry out this type of projects. A colleague mentioned this as the culture, the culture, different schools, different subjects, has different methodologies. So service learning perhaps is not related at first, but when you have a management team and a team that supports implementation, you need systematic actions over time, so as to convince, motivate teachers, And it's good that you mentioned teachers as a person that certainly has judgment, opinions, experiences, and some of them think that this really makes sense, while some others perhaps have different strategies. So I think that institutional culture is a constant challenge to us. And it's good in these panels to exchange practices so that this may become stronger in each of our institutions. With respect to the challenges and Pablo Apostol School, you know that we are an open school from an institutional perspective to do this type of practices. Some of the challenges, but during the practices we held and training sessions, perhaps we arrived at a place and we realized, for you to imagine the number of years I'm speaking about, we use slides, you know? So sometimes we arrive in a school that was very far away from everything, but they had accidents for poisonous animals, but there was no electricity. So look for different strategy, different mechanisms so as to try and solve that problem at that point in time with the animals we had there, so that the students may do some work with them. And with respect to the institution, we always were open to different projects. And there's a large share of our students that certainly are part of service learning projects, and many teachers at the same time that are included in these projects, at least during the history of the school. Each student participates between 2 and 3 projects, and some students participate in more projects. In some cases, that availability of resources may happen, that shortage may happen, but the schools, the parents, let's say that we solve those problems.
Bueno, desafío.
Challenges. Okay, in our case, I think that the major challenge is to prevent bureaucratization. And to that effect, we need to fine tune the relation with the community stakeholders, to work more and more with listening to their needs, to prepare good diagnosis. And I think that I'm not going to speak about the extremely high workload of teachers.
Yes, I think in our case, resources, especially in terms of time, remains a problem. Buy-in is still something that has to grow. And then sometimes also cultural elements, because this is South Africa is a very diverse country. We have 11 official languages, well, 12 with sign language, and many cultures that has very strict ways in which you enter a community.
I think that something really very interesting that perhaps is not being mentioned is that each institution has its own identity. Because this colleague is speaking about a private school, small. Marina is speaking about a school that is higher, that reports to the University of Buenos Aires. Then we have somebody from the University of Chile, somebody from the University in South Africa. So institutionalization has a peculiarity. There's no a magic recipe. So there are some things related to regulation, teachers training, relation with the community, how we articulate ourselves with the community stakeholders, how we motivate our teachers is not the same in each of the institutions we are representing here, because of the institution and because of the territory where each of our institutions is part of. So we have to think about that. There's no a single prescription for everyone that we may take. We may take, I don't know, idea, concerns, changes, but it's not that magic recipe that will help us all. Perhaps it's something obvious, but I have that we have to mention that and put it over the table. And now the last question. You have to be patient with mentees, you know. So to conclude, why institutionalization is worth doing. I don't know if you want to say 2 or 3 words or as many words as you like. Well, not as many. No, not as many. 2 or 3. From my perspective, empathy is key. We need these experiencing students that certainly have a remarkable footprint. Perhaps the projects are not the same. The projects may be modified based on what? Based on what the community needs, based on what a group of people need. And so students are attracted because of that needs and they start acting on that. So we have pillars, the students, the community, and the institution that will support the various practices so as to carry this out. Why institutionalization is worth doing?
I think that it has become extremely important in today's society, which seems to focus very much on the me as the individual, while social media through apps like TikTok can lead to a desensitization of the and an awareness of the suffering of others. Things become easy to ignore. Through service learning, we can create empathy or an awareness or reignite is perhaps a better word of empathy and of social responsibility. If we don't take responsibility for our society, it will not continue to exist.
Because we have to build a better world. We must. Otherwise, as Elize was saying, there will be no world. So I think this is one of the best ways to do it. Okay. Thank you once again. Thank you for being here. And with this idea of that institutionalization certainly means not to lose all these marvelous experiences, to keep them going over time, to go deeper into each of them, to assess them so as to improve them, to have an institutional culture that even though there may be a space for service learning, there may be some other spaces in the curriculum that may contribute to those learnings of the students so that work in the community may go beyond the specific experience. Our colleague says that the graduates keep on doing some work. It doesn't matter what is your program. Not all of us should be politologists or social sciences. We may be engineers, finance guys, but the point is that we should commit ourselves to something that is beyond individualism, beyond being short-sighted. Lilian, do you want to say something else? I just wanted to say that it was very interesting listening how these different institutions go to the institutionalization of serving learners using different paths based on their realities. We observed how if we consider the teacher's commitment, that is one of the dimensions of institutionalization, in the 4 institutions here, this is different. Because in some, as Evelina was saying, it started with one teacher and then some others joined voluntarily. Some others spoke about a plan. So there are different mechanisms and different strategies so as to work on the various dimensions. There are some things that were common that are related to participation and engagement, as we can see in the last slide. We also see as a common aspect participation and the commitment and support of the management. And with respect to regulation, and this was mentioned before, what is important, and Gabriela pointed it out, the regulation should not be something written, should be something alive that certainly is related to the experiences in the school. Otherwise, it's just a piece of paper. And finally, we should know that this is a long road. And as teacher says, we have to work, we have to assess, we have to systematize. This is a possible road, and we can see the results in the various institutions. So it's an invitation to keep on working. Thank you very much.